844-758-2881. Do you miss your mama's cooking? Then come on down to Q Time, an Urban Passport member.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
The Creole seasoning is a sodium-free and sugar-free blend that's versatile enough to put on anything. One of the first blends I developed more than 8 years ago, the Creole seasoning has an unmistakable aroma, a bold flavor, and a little heat for character. Every time I open one of these bottles, I hear trumpets and big band music.
Let's face it, shopping for insurance can be time-consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
I have in me the ability to make you a better you. So if you work hard, focus, stay on point, you can do anything. Trust me.
We made this track to tell everybody they can follow their dreams.
Majesty is a premium health and wellness tea line focused on bringing delicious yet healthy tea blends to the community. Filled with an abundance of vitamins and antioxidants, we work to blend teas with exotic spices and fruits to produce scrumptious and wholesome beverages. So check us out at mymajesties.com. That's MyMajesties.com. My Majesties, an Urban Passport member.
For my people that don't get to see me, trying to remind you who you are, just like in Romans 3. See, we about to blow across the world just like the day that's breezy. This motivation for the people, and this classic Bible teaching say, made this for my people that don't get to see me, trying to remind you who you are, just like in Romans 3. See, we about to blow across the world just like the day that's breezy. This motivation for the people, and this classic Bible teaching, motivation.
It was a monumental game for A&M and Tampa. It was a monumental game. Somebody had to lose, and thank God it was them this time.
We knew it was going to be a battle. Look at Jake Ave's record. 202 and 36, I think, some off-the-wall figures.
And nobody would play him because they didn't want to take a chance of getting beat. But the truth of it is,
over 46,000 tickets. Blacks were sitting in the east stands. Whites were sitting in the west stands, and the score wound up 34-28.
The only thing we proved that we wasn't inferior, that we were not inferior, and we were not afraid.
For one night, for 160 minutes, we was better than them.
In the beginning, there was nothing but darkness. Then with one beautiful bang, there was light. But with light came life. And with life came thought. And with thought came endless possibilities. Time and space are not infinite. And as such, the Creator has tasked me with a tremendous responsibility of destroying alternate universes. So I created a tournament where I allow beings from countless possibilities the chance to fight for their place in space and time. I am Alpha, and this is Versus.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KeversVoice.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
I hope my team, they won one. Yeah. I hope my team, they won one. Yeah. Man. I hope my team, they won one. I hope my team, they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won a loss. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavill, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won a loss, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. And you gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, boy. You gon' learn today, how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee, stay. You tune into the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Bill, Mike and Charles, and I'm Tab.
It's for the culture. Start your week.
Welcome to episode 76 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab show and podcast, the show that covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture and HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, along with my co-hosts, Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We are filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KCOH 1230 AM studios with Texas Radio Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. That's it, gentlemen. Before I pass on the news to each of y'all and ask you how you doing, you notice that I have this beautiful Caribbean island type of shirt. It is the University of the Virgin Islands, the only HBCU outside of the continental landmass of the United States. And I just saw where they were actually looking and have an opening, I would say, for an athletic director. So I thought I would just celebrate them and just kind of acknowledge the fact that, the HBCU. I'm just saying, Roy Evans over there.
It's a rather sleek fit on you as well, Doc. I like that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It does fit better than what it was. It was the largest they had at the time, but it fits a lot more comfortable now. I thank you for acknowledging that, Charles. Your boy's working on it. I'm working on it. And y'all been extremely supportive. Yeah. Don't even rib me like my big brother over there, Mike, does. You support it.
I was gonna say it looked powdered blue, but since you said since you said where it was from, now I can see the Caribbean in the shirt. It's coming out now. So
don't do our friend like that. Carlos Brown over there. Southern.
Hey, I just knew you were acknowledging Southern or something.
Yeah, the Carlos Brown show and all the other great Southern fans out there. No, this is University of the Virgin Islands. The place that I will admit this, the place that I'm seeking to retire and close out my academic career teaching over there. So I thought I'd maybe give them a little love since they're looking for an athletic director. I'm just saying.
Can you give them one more subtle wink, because that could not have been less subtle.
Strategic.
Thank you, Charles. See?
I like that.
There was nothing strategic about it. That was a wink, wink.
I told you, you better be glad I don't have the controls of the mic anymore. We leave that to our wonderful producer, but I do have the ability to text. So watch yourself, Mike. Today's episode of the Inside HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THC Agency. THC Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting data analytics. Today's show will be a good one. We will be joined by psychologist Dr. Philippia Evans to discuss coping without SWAC HBCU athletic sports during the COVID-19 pandemic. Later in the show, we will have Greg Moore, Commissioner of the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, SIAC, and University of Kentucky head basketball coach John Calipari to join us, discuss the John McClendon Minority Leadership Initiative. With that, gentlemen, what's some of the news of the day that you want to talk about?
Sure, we can get right into it. I mean, we now have the information that the MEAC and the SWAC both will not be playing this fall. So a little news out of the MEAC. 3 of their top MEAC players are out after postponing football. So we take a look at those 3. And this comes to us from our good friends at HBCU Game Day. Florida A&M offensive tackle Calvin Ashley. He announced on last Friday that he'll be foregoing his final season of eligibility. Calvin Ashley, of course, transferred from Auburn. The big 6'6", 335-pound offensive tackle will be taking his talents to the NFL draft. Along those same lines, North Carolina A&T offensive tackle Dante Keith, he also announced that he will be entering the transfer portal on Monday. And he was an all-MEAC offensive lineman as part of their 3 straight MEAC championship squads and Celebration Bowl winners. And also joining them will be South Carolina State defensive tackle Roderick Perry. Roderick Perry, 6'2", 300-pound lineman, had 34 tackles, 14.5 for a loss last year, and a forced fumble. He has drawn the attention of some NFL scouts. So kudos to those young men in terms of trying to take their talents on to the next level.
No doubt about it. Great point that you bring up there. It should be interesting the following. I know you will keep us up to date on all that information, Charles. Mike, what do you have for us?
So it appears that, and this comes to us not only from HBCU Game Day, several, again, social media alerts that you get, and from the Prairie View alumni group, that Prairie View won't have to cut Louisiana Tech a check. Now, to give you a little bit of background, Dr. Donald Reed, who's the new athletic director for Prairie View A&M, has basically had to take the reins from the get-go. He officially took office on July 15th. 5 days later, the conference made the decision, it was around the 20th, 21st of July, that they were going to postpone sports, including the fall football season, to the spring. That decision effectively canceled the Prairie View A&M football season, including a September 19th game against Louisiana Tech. Now, the game against the FBS opponent was set to had a payout of $350,000. There was reports initially that Prairie View would have to, make some amends or to pay the $350,000. But if you look at some of the transmissions, the bottom line is right now that Prairie View will not have to pay that $350,000. Louisiana Tech Director Tommy McClellan said his program intends to notify Prairie View to pay them the $500,000 cancellation charge for their September 19th game in Ruston. In our opinion, Dr. McClellan said, we're having to reschedule the game due to their cancellation. There's been other things about force majeure. For those of you who are not familiar with the legal term force majeure, act of God, Congress, war, and of nature. And that is a provision in the contract. So right now, long story made short, Prairie View is not having to cut Louisiana Tech a check for missing the September 9th football game.
I'm glad you shared that, Mike. That's some interesting conversation there, and I think it really had a buzz on the Black social media platforms, Twitter, namely Facebook, in a lot of ways, just to put it out there, frankly. And if we get a chance on the backside of the show, I'd like to get a little deeper into the conversation. One thing I would like to say before we give a shout out to some of the people and pass the news back to Charles People may not notice about Mike. Mike studied 2 years of law school before he got a little busy with his chemical engineering degree, and they started calling him and saying, "Hey, man, we need a couple of little extra hours." He had to start traveling, wasn't able to finish there. But I see you putting a little bit of legalese expertise there, talking force majeure. And for those that don't know, that was nice, Mike. That was nice.
Was that a jab, Doctor? I think that was a jab. He can't cut my mic off, so he jabbed. That's a little jab.
He took us back to 1AL on that one, didn't you?
Yeah, he did.
I'm just saying. Let me give some shout outs to these folks here. Give them some love for jumping on here. Chantel Fleming, Greensboro, North Carolina, checking in. She has the colors of A&T, so I'm gonna jump out there a little bit and say Aggies are in the house. Lawrence D. White, AD is on here. Appreciate the support. You know they have that great show. Y'all need to check them out over there, Brian and AD, as they do it with the sports rap. They right there on VCSN with us, man. Check them out. Trudy Jackson, New Orleans, Louisiana, checking us out. Reggie Howe, CIAA, certainly in the house. Chuck Hunt up there at Monroe, Louisiana. You know he brings it. What's up, Big 3? Appreciate you showing us much love. Yes. Garland Malone. Good evening, gentlemen. Yes, good evening. Appreciate you. Carlos Brown, we gave him a little shout out, so you know, hopefully he caught that because he brings a great show he had with the Young Guns as he brought them in on the show. Y'all check that out, man. You talking about the next generation coming up. Carlos is setting the pace, getting a little voice for them gentlemen out there, showing some much love with Dr. Travion Scott, giving plenty of love out there in a lot of ways. Coming out of the SWAC office, getting all of it done. Who is that? Kriska Harper is checking us out. Much love. Chuck Hunt, as we said, Ricky Burton, Sarah Braley, giving us a little love in terms of what's in the mix there. So I'm gonna make sure we do a little shout out as we continue to get it done in so many different ways. Just wanted to make sure that everybody knew what was going on there. Before I pass it back to Mike, Charles, go ahead and give me some updates there in terms of what you see going on a little bit with the conference moving forward in so many different ways.
Sure thing. We take a look, and there's been some scuttlebutt that we've seen over the past few days in terms of will North Carolina A&T, will they actually look at trying to play this season? And shout out to our friend of the show, Mo Carter, sports director WZDX in Huntsville. Was taking a look at his Twitter feed today. He had a nice conversation, looks like, with the Big South Commissioner, Cal Callender, where they kind of took a look at talking to A&T in terms of playing, but it looks like North Carolina A&T will not be playing this fall. So shout out to Mo Carter. He does yeoman work in terms of getting good information out there and covers Alabama A&M and SWAC as well as anybody out there. So shout out to Mo.
Yeah, no doubt. I think Mo really did a great job in regards to getting that information and getting that interview. Did want to say on Carlos' show that he did talk to also Dr. Jason Capel. So we talking about in regards to the deputy athletic director at Southern University and obviously the senior associate commissioner, Dr. Jason Capel, in regards to that show. Wanted to give a love for Garland. He talked about that North Carolina A&T. He wanted you to hit on that. So we'll get a chance to visit that a little more. But I also wanted to say I thought in a lot of ways, game day did it again in so many different ways in terms of their breakdown in terms of the A&T football framework. It looks like in a lot of ways A&T Aggies were ready to make this move. They had put such that they can have a board meeting that came earlier today. But it sounds like MEAC was like, hey, we're not finished yet. We might play some football in the spring, play some sports in the spring. And so that essentially puts the kibosh to that. So I think there were probably serious talks about what's going on. They believe that you needed board approval. When I say they, North Carolina A&T, so they were prepared for that. But then when the MEAC says we're going to play football, that really cuts all that down. Big South backs off and says, hey, we don't want any problem with that. If that's the case, we're not saying that you can play on our football schedule, which essentially means that North Carolina A&T can't play an independent season for the fall as a current member of the MEAC, if there is any framework that they may be possibly playing in the spring. So that's how that all kinds to come together. Something that is interesting that you might be able to get a chance throughout the show to kind of dig a little deeper than that, because that article that pays tribute to Mo Carter in regards to the reference of the tweet that he sent out there. Stephen Gaither did a bang-up job in terms of what's going on out there.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost time to bring on our guest, but I didn't want to slip this by there, so I'm going to put this out there. HBCU Sports, Ken Rashad leveled a nice notification that came out there based on Florida A&M required student athletes to sign an agreement accepting risk of COVID-19. So that came out this morning, if you would. That was pretty interesting. We might get a chance to go a little deeper into that. But for those that hadn't caught that, that's some heavy HBCU sports news of the day that's fascinating and interesting. And before we bring on our guest, Dr. Philippia Evans, let me give a couple of more shouts out to Willie Alex Hines. He's jumped in here, chiming in, obviously. So that's some of the great news out there. Y'all keep it going with the chatters. When we get a chance, we'll make sure we shout you out throughout the show. If you have some questions that we can get in there, we'll try to keep an eye on what's going on with these live chats. As you know, we like to engage you as much as possible. But if we would, let's go ahead and bring Dr. Philippia Evans on to the top of the show so we can get into our first interview, if you would. As we're preparing for that, let me do a little introduction of Dr. Philippia Evans in regards to, one, what we'll be discussing on the show during our interview, and a little bit of background of herself. Intro is coping during and after COVID-19. Dr. Philippia Evans is a psychologist, PhD psychologist. So the purpose of this segment is to discuss sports consumption of coping during and after COVID-19 with Dr. Philippia Evans, as we said, a PhD psychologist and proud alumni of Prairie View A&M University and a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Let's hear it for the proud ladies of AKA. As you know, welcome to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Dr. Philippia Evans. How you doing?
I'm good. How's everybody doing this evening?
Doing well. Thank you
Doing
for coming
good.
in.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, it's good to have you on there. Let's jump right into it.
Okay.
With a couple of questions. But before we do that, share with our listeners a little bit about yourself, at least where you're from, and what are you currently doing now in regards to your PhD.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. My name is Dr. Philippa Evans. I am a proud graduate of 3 HBCUs. I went to undergrad at Prairie View A&M University. I have a master's. I have a master's from Fisk and my PhD from Tennessee State University. So I am truly an HBCU grad.
Impressive, man.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. See, that's what we do with it, Dr. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. With Mike Washington and Charles Bishop, we bring you some of those perspectives that you can't quite get anywhere else, and we connect that HBCU connection. So, Dr. Philippia Evans, as we continue, let's jump right into it. You know, a lot of you've heard about this. You're a big sports fans in a lot of ways, you know. And you've heard different HBCU institutions counseling fall sports, mainly football, with a lot of people interested. Some of that includes homecomings, these big classics. Then you had the conferences. Division II kind of started out with the SIAC and then the CIAA. Then we had FCS level. The MEAC jumped in on this. And ultimately last week with the SWAC, other than the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference that has HBCUs operating in the NIA, that does it with 4 of the 5. So you have these fans that many of them supported this initiative and understood it, certainly, but it doesn't mean they may not have some withdrawals and coping, because you've heard a lot about that as well. How should fans cope with no HBCU football?
Well, first of all, let me ask, how are all of you all doing?
That's why you know on the show.
Yeah, that's you catch that. She's the professional. She gonna check on her. Boy, I feel so special. Thank you. I'm doing well. To be honest with you, this show in a lot of ways allows me to stay connected connects with my HBCU fans. Obviously, with two of my best friends in the world, I put that out there. Everybody doesn't know that. The two extremely good colleagues of mine. It gives me a chance to continue with discourse and do it in a way that is professional and likes people, but at the same time, we get to kick it, as you see, a little bit. We can talk Noah, so don't take that against us. So I'm doing well, and it sounds like they are.
Well, and yourself, I'm not. I'm not. I got a plan around the challenge. I got a plan around the homecoming. I mean, I'm serious. That's not happening. There are people planning weddings, funerals, birthdays all around these games, and now.
And we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it, Mike.
Dr. Evans, I'm trying to supplement it with as much golf as I can. So.
Oh, my goodness. Well, at least you are social distancing with golf.
Yes.
Well, you know, one of the things I want to talk about first is with the cancellation of sports and HBCUs, we know that that's a huge loss. That's kind of almost like a loss of a loved one. Because that's part of HBCU's identity. I mean, we know that sports is ingrained in our culture. It's a significant part of HBCU's identity. It's not the whole identity, but it's part. Because when we talk about football, then we talk about the band. And then when we talk about the band, we talk about homecoming. And with that being said, saying that there's no homecoming, that's a huge loss. That's a huge loss. And like Mike said, you know, you kind of plan your vacations around homecoming. You know, you think about that Bayou Classic, you think about the Capital City Classic, you think about Labor Day Classic, and not having that, that's going to be extremely hard. But there are ways that we can get through this. And what we're going to do is talk about that. But actually, it is like grieving the loss of a loved one. And, you know, there are stages of grief. There's anger, there's denial, there's depression, there's bargaining. You know, there's acceptance. So we're going to probably go through all of those changes, because at one point in time we were like, well, what if we just had a game and no band? Or, you know, what if we had a game and no home? You know, there was that bargaining. Am I right?
You're right. Very right.
Absolutely true.
Yeah. And now we've gotten to the point where we have to accept it. We have to accept that this is the new culture. This is the new normal. And then we also have to understand that it's for safety. Even though sometimes it's really kind of hard for us to kind of put that in check, we do have to understand that it is strictly safety. But we will get through this, and we do have some ways to get through it without sports.
I appreciate that. Follow up, Charles, with that question was we jumped right into it. That's a good one.
Well, you know, Dr. Evans, I'm trying to watch baseball now with no fans in the stands, and I'm just curious, you know, in terms of how will fans feel, you know, once we kind of get to football season and the pro football that they're still set to play, but just kind of watching games without fans in the stands. What does that do?
Well, you know, Charles, I think it's really going to kind of vary for individuals there, you know, because everybody may be to the point where they want that large connection. They need to see those fans. And then you're going to have some sports people who are going to be like, I just want to see a game. I just want to see some action. I just want to see some competition. You know, it doesn't really matter if I've got the computer generated fans, which they're doing now to try to pump in the music, but it's really going to vary on individuals. And then at this point in time, this is where we're going to have to be creative, kind of think outside the box, you know, maybe create that environment in your own home, you know, maybe have the social distancing party outside. But there is going to be ways that everybody is going to be able to kind of figure out on their own. I think some individuals are going to need that interaction, or they're going to need to see those fans. And then you've got those who are really just diehards who just want to see some action. Like, for example, last month, we saw how so many people were so into The Last Dance because they were just so enthralled with some sports. So I think it's really going to vary on the individual.
Sure thing.
Certainly, I thank you for sharing it. And shameless plug, I would say one of the other things they could do is they could jump in here and see Dr. Ville's Inside the HBCU Sports Live.
With Mike and Charles.
With Mike and Charles. And Dr. Felicia Evans. You know, get your fix. We'll bring it to you. Shameless plug. With that, save me from this, Mike. Go ahead and follow up.
Just shameless, man. Yeah. Dr. Evans, I mean, you mentioned supplanting that. You know, there's a loss. It's like losing a loved one. And a lot of people get really enthralled in social media, more so than in the past. And, you know, I'm guilty myself. Folks get involved in like heavy conversations more so. Is this a good thing? Can this help fans? Or is there some kind of psychological impact of getting too enthralled in social media in the absence of all that other stuff that we have planned?
That's a really good question, Mike, because we know that social media is pretty much the platform that everybody's using, whether it's just to connect, whether it's as a resource, or whether it's just for entertainment. But one of those things that I always encourage people to do about social media is you got to manage and you got to monitor. And what I mean by that is monitor your intake. You know, don't come to the point where you're reading that feed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know, even if you're working from home, you got it on the side of the computer or in the middle of a Zoom meeting, you know, you on that feed. So you really, am I hitting some spots?
That never happens to these three.
So, and you just have to really monitor and manage that, because if you get to the point where you get so obsessed and overwhelmed with that social media, then it gets to take on a whole new meaning in your life. You kind of lose track of maybe actually engaging with people. And we know that social media could be also a tool, and sometimes it can be a hindrance. We know that a lot of times people use that as a way to bully. We know sometimes people use that as a way to kind of let go of certain emotions that they necessarily probably wouldn't say in person. So what we want to do is just make sure that you monitor and manage that social media. Use it as a resource, use it as a tool, you know, not as a platform to bully, not as a platform to hide behind, but just use it as a tool, a resource, connecting like what you all are doing. Being able to kind of reach out and reconnect with people that you haven't, maybe engaging areas or places that we haven't talked to or people we haven't talked to. Being able to do those things, I think, will really help with social media and this period of time where there's no sports.
Yeah,
I really think that's helpful. I appreciate you sharing that. In fact, I want to take a little deeper dive in that. Can social media affect fans' personality when you talk about those issues that Mike asked?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think kind of picking back on what I just said to Mike about re-engaging, because I think oftentimes we can get so engaged in social media that we lose contact with others. We kind of lose sense of reality. We're not wanting to engage. And then also, it can also really get to the point where it kind of creates that antisocial behavior. It could also kind of feed some of those insecurities that people may have. And then sometimes it gets to the point where it may fuel, you know, some underlining issues. You know, and we've seen the hateful tweets, we've seen the racist tweets. So oftentimes it really can be an opportunity for people to say things and do things that they necessarily wouldn't do in public or in person. So it can, like I said earlier, it can be a good thing, and then it could be a bad thing. And that's with anything that we do.
Makes a lot of sense. Let me jump back to Mike for a follow-up question there.
Yeah, so let's look on the opposite side. Once this thing turns around and comes around, you mentioned again, going back to your example, it's like losing a loved one. Now you got the loved one back. What watch out psychologically should we be aware of once this thing comes back? Should we be aware of overindulging? Should we be aware of doing too much too soon? You know, maybe I don't know, but that's kind of why I put that question on the table.
And that's understandable. I think what I would suggest that we do is not do the NFL ticket on one TV, and then you've got Facebook and baseball.
Oh man, there go my play.
What I think we need to do is we need to kind of gradually go back into it. And I don't want it to get to the point where we're just sitting right in front of the TV on Sunday from the first game to the end of the game, because we must remember we do have lives. And, you know, my thing is we've had lives since we didn't have sports, but when sports resume, we need to pick right back up with those lives. You know, we need to engage with those families. We need to reconnect, because I'm sure everybody is sheltering in place and spending quality time at home. And that may be good and it may not be so good. But there has been an opportunity for us to spend a lot of quality time with our families.
Yeah.
And so I don't want us to kind of reverse all of that when sports comes back. We just kind of throw everything to the table and say, hey, sports is back, I'm all in. And I think it goes back to that being able to monitor and manage.
Certainly. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, and I kind of want to piggyback on Mike's question because I thought one of the unique things that the SWAC did was they postponed the season. And the question I asked was, I thought that kind of gave fans hope to at least get to the spring. How important do you think that postponing was actually helpful to a lot of fans who follow our HBCU team?
I think that was a good Jedi mind trick. Because my thing is, it really gives you to the point where it's not canceled. So it's going to be next year. So, you know, you've got people thinking, oh, my goodness, I've got something to look forward to. You know, and I think that postponement kind of gives us, it alludes to help. Like, okay, well, we know that it's not going to happen this year, but I know that I can schedule my vacation next year around it. I know I can do this. It gives me that opportunity to know that there is something to look forward to. And we all want that.
Yeah.
We all want to be able to have some hope. We all want to be able to have something to look forward to. And so I think the postponement was a really good trick, but I think it really works.
It's an interesting point.
Yeah, I appreciate that in a lot of ways. As we come to a close on the interview, one of the things, if you could encapsulate how we move forward, but we had a viewer ask the question in terms of long term, how does this social distancing, how it may affect us? So as you close, if you can kind of roll that into your thoughts about this in regard to that.
Yeah, and I think that the social distancing is going to be something that's going to be around for a while, but I do believe that it is going to be a challenge. I just think that it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be something that we're going to have to be mindful of, but it's also going to be something that we are going to have to get used to, because as we return back to things, they're not going to be like they used to be. So there are going to be a lot of things that we have to take in consideration, and we have to be mindful of that. As far as the long term, I think that there's so much for us to learn from this period of us being sheltering in place, being at home. I think we're learning how to be resourceful, resilient. And I think with HBCU alums, that's all we've ever known, is to be resourceful and resilient. Because if you went to an HBCU, you had no choice.
That's true.
And so this opportunity now is giving us the opportunity to kind of think outside the box, for us to be creative, and to kind of use resources that we may not have used, maybe going back and getting things that we haven't thought about moving forward. Because there are going to be opportunities where we can kind of create a new normal for us as HBCUs. And I think this will also give us the opportunity to kind of, we always love our HBCUs, but I think we're going to have a greater sense of appreciation now because we're missing those things. You know, we're going to miss that homecoming. You're going to miss seeing that old girlfriend, or you're going to miss stepping with the bros. You're going to miss all of that. But we know that homecoming has always been one of those gatherings of family. It's just like, and so I think that that's going to be a huge, you know, part of grieving for all of us. But I think as we move forward, we can see that there are other areas that we can give back to our HBCUs, not only doing homecoming, but doing year round, because they need us. So with that being said, to kind of wrap everything up, we have got to make sure that we do self-care. And what I mean by that is during this period when a lot of us are working from home, again, like I said, we're spending time. We've got to make sure that we take care of ourselves. And that means being able to kind of manage that social media. That also means kind of staying on that routine. If you're working out, continue to do that, eat properly, get good sleep. And then two, making sure that you stay positive. You know, we've got to stay positive, because if you look at the news and you see the cases and you see the actual test, that can be anxiety provoking in itself. So what we've got to do is continue to be positive and to make sure that we take care of ourselves so that we can take care of the others around us.
Sure.
Perfect. Yeah. I want to thank you for your time. This is Dr. Cavill inside HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Felipe Evans, PhD psychologist, talking about coping during and after COVID-19. Again, thank you for your time. And we are getting ready to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more of Dr. Cavill's Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop in our next interview.
Thanks for having me.
It's for the culture. Start your week the HBCU way. Get the latest updates from your HBCU sports news of the week with your host, Dr. Cavill, Mike, and Charles. On Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Central on KCOH 1230 AM, Facebook Live, and as a podcast on streaming platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Podcast App.
What up, world? It's your boy, Rob Calloway, host of the HBCU Report. And right now, you're inside the HBCU Sports Lab with my guy, all hail the dean of HBCU Sports. You know I named him that. Dr. Kenyatta Cavill, my guy. What's happening, man?
Yes.
You're listening to
like
Inside
like
the
that.
HBCU
This
Sports
is Dr.
Lab
Cavill,
with my
Inside
guy,
HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles
HBCU
Bishop.
Sports, none
Let's
other
get
than
into our
Dr.
next
Kenyatta
interview.
Cavill.
We have Greg Moore, Commissioner of the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, SIAC, and John Calipari, head men's basketball coach of the University of Kentucky, to discuss the McClendon Minority Leadership Initiative, MLI. Welcome to Inside HBCU Sports Lab, gentlemen. How's it going?
Coach, you're on.
How's it going, Coach Calipari?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, doing really good. Really excited to hear a little more about this McClendon Minority Leadership Initiative. Before we get into that, I think it would be appropriate, obviously, with COVID-19. How are you doing? How's your family doing? And how are your players at the University of Kentucky?
You know, we're fortunately, we're all blessed and everybody is good. We have a unique situation that we're truly in a bubble within the basketball program. We have the lodge where they live. Across the parking lot is where they practice, train, lift. They have meals made in where they live and in boxes. We've really, these are people's children. My players think I'm going overboard, but I'm like, no, this is, and we've really been slow. We're still not playing 5 against 5 or 2 against 2. We're doing, to this point, we were doing individuals and now 5-on-0. So, and my personal family's all good so far. We're, I think all of us are trying to wear the mask, listen to the doctors and the science, and, try to do the right thing by everybody.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing that. And with that, let me get those that may not have heard about this. I'm not sure where they would be if they hadn't. But the purpose, in my understanding of the McClendon Minority Leadership Initiative, MLI, is to provide minorities a jump start to their careers through practical experience, opportunities to build their networks, and instilling the values of John McClendon: integrity, education, leadership, and mentorship. I know you come out and partnered with the commissioner of the SIAC, Gregory Moore, LaVon Moulton over there, the head coach at the University of North Carolina Central University, I should say. And so if you would, tell me a little more, why do this program now?
Now, the bigger question may be, why didn't I push this 10 years ago? What took so long? There's diversity on the fields and on the courts, but there's not diversity in the administration. There's not diversity in decision makers. Each athletic department has 15 decision makers. Where is the minority leadership and decision makers? And that's, as much as a springboard to a career, we're trying to help develop the next wave of leaders and decision makers And if we coaches, and it's coach driven, it's not me. The initial thing, and again, Greg has been just such a great mentor to me and a sounding board, and to make sure we are on track, to make sure we're doing the right thing. But the idea was to do it at Kentucky. And then it was like, well, if we get other coaches involved, we can maybe do this to scale. There's going to be 20 jobs posted in the next day or so. They may have been posted today. We have over nearly 200 applications in, and we're just now starting to post jobs. The jobs will keep coming in waves as they're funded by coaches. And let me say this, Greg, if you don't mind, I'm going to brag on you a little bit. When I first got going, he and I have talked for a while, and I've been involved with different things over the years. But before all this happened, he and I have had conversation. And then when this came about with and I don't know how else to say it, the murder of George Floyd, I mean, it became, well, we got to do something. There's got to be action. And the more I was with Greg, here's what I found out. He's about solutions. He thinks in terms of how I know issues, what are solutions? The second thing I loved about him was he would push the envelope. With me, he would push the envelope. One conversation we had, I didn't feel comfortable getting off, and I called him right back and said, you know, Greg, talk to me now and tell me, am I tone deaf? Tell me what. And here's was his comment. You want me to help you with that pipeline. I need help with my pipeline. Let's work together. And he knows what I said. Hey, we'll go shoulder to shoulder. Let me get this up and going, and I'm going to help and be with you whatever you need. But here's the last thing, what I absolutely love. He's not afraid to speak truth to power. He's going to tell the truth. And so for me, who better to be a part of this to say, you know what, let's see if this makes a difference, because this is real. This is not a one-time optic. We want this to go at least 10 years. We want to have data after 4 to 5 years about, is this working? What do we need to do to make it better? And in 10 years, let's see if athletic departments look different. Lastly, this has gone into business. This has gone into baseball, Major League Baseball, talking about athletes who were in their minors who now need to get back, be a part, taught soft skills that they've never loved, and maybe get educated and then be in management or whatever. This thing, business-wise, my hope is in 10, 12 years, we look and there are business owners that began through here, learning, again, being developed as leaders. There are people in politics. There are people in athletics. There are 5 times as many minority ADs. And let me say this, we're talking women now, too. So this is about men and women, minority leaders. If you have an interest, I'm going to throw this in, minorityleaders.org. You can go and put an application in, college graduate. Here you are. It'll walk you through what you have to do. But these aren't just like throw a couple jobs out there. That's not what this is.
That's a really great breakdown in terms of how you encapsulated. This question is for Greg, Commissioner Moore. If you would, personally, how has adhering to leadership lessons changed your career path? And I imagine that in a lot of ways is important why you decided to partner up on this.
Excuse me, adhering to leadership lessons? I don't follow the question, Dr. Phil.
No, I was just saying a part of this is about development of leadership. Inside of management, both of you all are in significant leadership positions. You as the commissioner of the SIAC and John, Coach Calipari, in terms of his leadership as a head men's basketball coach and all the peripherals that it brings together. So I was just asking in terms of, I'm sure you had to develop these leadership skills at some place in some area. Why is that important, and how has it affected you, and why is that important to have a place where you can develop it based on the program that y'all put together?
Yeah, I think one of the most important lessons, and I appreciate everything Coach said. His kind words. I'll just correct the record with respect to the Coach Calipari. He's being a bit modest, even though we've been having this discussion post George Floyd, more intensely about providing opportunities. Coach Calipari, going back to his days at UMass, Memphis, Kentucky, he's been providing African American coaches, strength coaches, sports administrators opportunities for many, many moons. My first encounter with him was way back in 2011 when he appeared at a ESPN function discussion on racial equity at Ebenezer Baptist Church here in Atlanta, Georgia. Out of that panel discussion, he began playing against some of our schools. Morehouse, I believe, played at Rough Ringer that year, and most recently this year, Coach Cal invited Kentucky State student athletes to play at UK. So, he's not new to this discussion. And more importantly, what always impressed me about Coach Cal was not what he says, but what the families, and more importantly, the mothers and his former players say about him in the program. He's always given me the impression, and the families of his players have given me the impression that he puts the kids first in terms of providing them opportunities to better their lives. And I think his track record and what his former players have gone on to do, it kind of reinforces that idea. So this is, to me, in direct alignment with what Coach has been doing for many, many years. In terms of leadership, to me, Dr. Gaville, to me, leadership and service are opposite sides of the same coin. We have a lot of folks who want to lead, but they don't understand that, they don't have a full appreciation of the service component of it. And if you don't have a overarching mission and purpose to help people, then you're probably not qualified to lead anyone. And I think that's the most important, lesson I've kind of tried to follow over my career, that, you should go into any environment with an overarching objective to serve. And when you have that, if you're driven by that mission and purpose, then that, to me, is the core qualification of leading.
Certainly. I appreciate you sharing that, the contextuality of that. If you would, Mike, would you follow up with a question?
Yes, Coach Calipari, Coach and Commissioner Moore. This is Mike Washington here, and my question is somewhat twofold. First of all, this program has gained traction. It's sprouting legs, it's growing. First part of that is, how are you positioning that program with potential sponsors? And I would even say and/or champions of the program. And then second part of that is, what has been the feedback from outside with regard to this program? I know you had to have thus far received overwhelming feedback and accolades on the program. What does that look like as well?
Let me say one thing, Dr. Cabell. When you and Mike, I appreciate your question.
Thank you.
I got to say this in every time that Greg and I get on. One thing that my wife and I know and realize and accept and appreciate is the fact that our success, my success, the things that have happened for me and my family have been a direct correlation between African American families entrusting us with their son. If they had not, we would have no success at all, which leads me to say, how do I give back? How do I help? How do I create access and opportunity? When you ask me about, okay, who's excited about this thing turned around in about 5 weeks. 5 weeks. Wow. And so everyone we talked to, Greg and I have been on great calls together. He and I ping pong back and forth, and it's unbelievable. Like, I get off the call inspired. We've talked to different companies around the country, but the issue is they don't move as quick as we move. I like to work based on, we should have had this done yesterday. They move a little slower, but I don't think there's one company that we've talked to. And again, when you talk about the top coaches in college, basketball, and football. They're involved in this. They're committed to this. And so businesses will come along. Right now, we'll have 20 jobs posted. My guess was within 2 to 3 weeks after that, we'll have another 20 to 30 jobs posted. And by the time September rolls around, we'll be at 60 to 70 positions. And again, these are opportunities. This is a springboard. Anyone out there, any future leader that says, I just haven't had a chance. I don't have the connections. I don't think I'm going to get an opportunity. This is what this is about. Now, you have to perform. You have to take advantage of the situation and your opportunity. And then I would tell you, run with it. But they're going to have mentors within the athletic department, the coaches who are funding this, not the athletic departments. The coaches will also serve as mentors. And again, this thing is, I'm looking at this and I said to somebody, I hope we look back in 20, 25 years and we said, he's running for president. Do you know he went through the McClendon initiative? And so we don't know where this is going to go. But I have hopes, and the reason I feel good is the coaches that have committed to this, committed for multiple years. Not I'm in and I'm out, I showed that I care, and I'm done. That's not what this is.
No doubt about it. Charles, if you would follow up with a question, or Commissioner Moore, did you want to jump in there? I apologize.
No, I would just echo that. We have been on a couple of calls with potential partners. The calls have went well. I'll just say, as a son of a sports fan and been a long-time admirer of Coach, great coaches are, they're teachers. They're great communicators. They also can sell, right? So to be able to get a coach, a Hall of Fame coach with Coach Calipari's skill set, to lend his skills to support, historically black colleges in general, and the McClendon initiative in particular, it's been a great privilege for me, and I'm very optimistic that at some point, we'll be able to, as Coach said earlier, to see some investments in these institutions materialize at some point down the line.
Great point. In a lot of ways, you're a modest man yourself in regards to many of the platforms of how you extended the reach of the SIAC in many different facets. Obviously, in terms of this call right now, we can't name them all, and it's not necessarily the appropriate place, but I did want to share and put that out there. So thank you both for all the work you're doing. With that, let me let Charles follow up with a question.
Yeah, Coach Calipari, Charles Bishop here. And I wanted to just ask, just listening to the information, I guess the natural question I want to ask is, how does an applicant sort of prepare themselves for this leadership initiative? What are the things that they need to be doing right now to prepare themselves as an applicant?
Yeah, because they may want to do this next year after this season. So you're right, but we have this came together so fast because we were able to house it in the John McClendon Foundation. And please, everybody listening, Google John McClendon, a pioneer in our profession of coaching, a true gentleman who didn't do it screaming and yelling. Now, they said I had Larry Brown, who you guys all know. Larry Brown, the great Hall of Fame basketball coach, was at SMU last. And he said to me, he was the hardest guy that I've ever had to play for. And I said, why? He said, and he never raised his voice. He said, because all you did is run. He brought fast break basketball to basketball. The four-corner offense, you remember the North Carolina?
Yes.
Oh, no, that was Coach McClendon's offense. That was his offense.
That's right.
So you need to look there and Google who he is and what he is. And then the second thing that happened was Tony Manfuso from ProLink Staffing said, look, I'm going to do this, and this is going to be worth about $250,000 of service, but I'm giving it to you because I believe in this. So all the applications would go to ProLink Staffing. The person, again, we're asking for, because we want these to be jobs so a college graduate, and now all of a sudden they'll interview you. We're going to have jobs like Gonzaga, all the way down to Florida, over to Texas, over to Kentucky. I mean, these are all over the country now. So you may be somewhere where you want to do this, but he will then say, here are the candidates. And if you didn't make the list, they are going to call the candidates that didn't and say, here's where you're short. Here's what you got to do. And then you can reapply like a year from now. How about this one? He's going to have a database, Charles, of minority leaders and candidates in all kind of different fields, where a business may call up and say, you know, I'm looking for an accountant. I'd like a minority accountant. What do you have that? And all of a sudden, he's going to have a pool. I'm telling everybody, get involved in this. And it may not be in athletics that it helps you, but it's. Right. I'm looking at this saying and would you agree, Greg? We don't even know where this is going. It changes by the day, but we're using athletics as the springboard.
Wow. Yeah, I would just add to that, Dr.
No doubt about it. Please do.
Yeah, I would just add to that by saying what kids need to do to prepare is, people ask me, like, what? I mean, I still practice law for almost 20 years. And folks will say, what do you have to do to prepare to be a good sports lawyer? I said, you got to be a good lawyer. You got to learn the law. Sports business is just business. So, the point is that if you're in school and you're a marketing major or a business major or accounting major, if you work in a sports context, that makes you kind of a sports accountant, but you have to be a good accountant, right? So, to me, the best preparation is the nuts and bolts skill set that you need to succeed in business. You got to develop that because those will be transferable in a sports context.
All right, I got to throw it out again. MinorityLeaders.org. MinorityLeaders.org. If you go there, you'll get all the information.
Say that one more time.
MinorityLeaders.org.
Got it. MinorityLeaders.org. Final question for you, Greg, and then John, you can have a closing framing on this as well. But one of the things you talked about, Coach, was the need for preparation and being prepared and how you go into this. And I'm also of the thought process that when you have the partnership of this magnitude, that and when I say we as HBCU alumni that happen to be in that place, is also about making sure that we support this as well. So, Greg, how can HBCU alumni help this program as well? How do we become engaged as alumni that believe in this and see the power of this and what it can do with HBCU students, in particular minorities, even from a bigger perspective? How do we help facilitate pushing this forward, if you would? And again, you can start with Greg, and this can also be one of those questions that you can close your thoughts on this as well, John.
I think the first thing that alumni have to do, and a few things. That's a great question, Dr. Gabil. I think the first thing that there has to be some awareness of the problem. And it's not enough to just say, well, there's not enough black coaches and ADs. And I think people need to understand at least the basic framework of the challenge, in terms of empirically. That college sports is a $12 billion a year business. That the Power 5 leagues generate $2.5 billion of that money. And that the two sports that generate revenue, basketball and football, are approaching 60% African American, young men. And that's an important thing to understand, because once you understand that the college sports economy, by and large, is not only being financed by African American young men, but when you look at Title IX, right, and all the sports that are financed by Title IX, there's a significant underrepresentation in African Americans in sports like field hockey and volleyball and swimming and fencing and the like. my point is you have to understand that to understand the urgency of what Coach is talking about in terms of the moral imperative of making sure that African Americans are not just playing on the field and the gridiron on the courts, that equity dictates that they have to get more opportunities in the athletic departments and the administrative capacities. So I think that's the first thing, just become aware of that number and the economics of what the problem is. The second thing, once you're aware of that, begin to have these kind of conversations with your alumni, with your fellow alumni associations. Begin to share the opportunity that Coach Cal is talking about with minorityleaders.org. Encourage as many young people or young alumni who want to work in sports, college sports in particular, to apply, and just really, push to raise awareness of this opportunity. And the other thing is important. You got to give back to your school. Whether you're an alumni of the school or not, you have to give back, because these schools, there's a study done by the I think Department of Education several years ago that said historically black colleges generate $10 billion of economic impact, over $10 billion of economic impact in the southwest and southeastern part of the United States. The reason why I think that's very important is because you're looking at towns and communities that where our schools are located that enjoy poverty rates that are 2 to 3 times the national poverty rate. Last time I checked, in 2010 census, the poverty rate was around 15%. Dr. Gaville, Tuskegee is 40% poverty. Albany, Georgia is where Albany State is 30% poverty. The area around Morehouse and Clark approaching 30%. So, if you care about income inequality, if you understand the impact that these schools have in communities, with jobs, educational opportunities, whether you went to these schools or not, and you care about equity, you have to begin to invest in these schools and contribute to these institutions.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Very much so. Yeah.
Very.
Certainly, I want to say
one thing. I'll add one thing, Dr. Gaville. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I've been following your research for over a decade. I happened to just come across your research when I was teaching as an adjunct in the sports master's program, and I uncovered one of your white papers that focused on some of these economic issues in terms of HBCU athletics in particular. And I'm unaware of anyone in the country, any academic in the country, who's contributed more to this discussion with respect to the economics of historically black college athletic departments and universities than yourself. And you've been doing this for a very, very long time with not as much fanfare as you deserve, which is why I'm glad we had a chance to go on your show this evening.
Thank you for that. This is Dr. Gaville, inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We're going to take if you all will hold on, we're going to take a quick break, and we'd like to let you finish that full discussion. Give us about 30, because we're going to sign off on one of our over-the-air programs, and then we'll allow you both to have a closing statement. It'll be about 30 seconds, and we'll be right back. This is Dr. Gaville's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Greg Moore, Commissioner of the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, SIAC, and John Calabrese, head men's basketball coach at the University of Kentucky. Stick with us. They're talking about McClendon Minority Leadership Initiative, MLI. You can go to www.minorityleaders.org to find out more, but stick around. We'll be right back to allow them to close on some very important facts that you need to know. Give us about 30 seconds.
It's for the culture. Start your week the HBCU way. Get the latest updates from your HBCU Sports News of the Week with your host, Dr. Caville, Mike, and Charles. On Dr. Caville's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Central on KCOH 1230 AM, Facebook Live, and as a podcast on streaming platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Podcast App.
This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Greg Moore, Commissioner of the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, SIAC, John Calipari, the head men's basketball coach of the University of Kentucky, to discuss McClendon Minority Leadership Initiative, MLI. Again, you can go to www.minorityleaders.org to get more information. And with that, we want to close out on this conversation. I know, John, you had some finishing thoughts that you wanted to add to the discussion and certainly wanted to make sure we got that in. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Doctor. Here's, you asked how people can get involved. Let me explain what the funding is. So if you are hired in one of these positions, you're going to get a grant of $2,500 a month, which is going to be $30,000. Now, most people, when you get interns or those, and a lot of times it's you're working for nothing, or practically, and this is not that. This is, we don't want anybody to have to take a loan. We don't want anybody to have to borrow from friends. Take a second job, not dip into savings. This is supposed to be a springboard. So each position is about $30,000, which is what the coaches are funding. Now, I would say if anybody wants to be involved, call your school and say, hey, are we doing any of this? If you would like to give money to matching funds, we'll do it. Now, we have North Carolina Central and Lavelle Moton right now is involved. Yeah. I've had 5 different calls from HBCU coaches who want to be involved in this, and we're trying to figure out how we do it. But these are jobs that are being paid, and they're, it's a great entry to learning and being involved and developed as a leader and a future decision maker.
Perfect. Well said. And I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy gentleman, taking care of a great deal of the business, both in your organizations and institutions. And for you to get out here and take your time to visit with us to provide more information on this program, the John McClendon, Minority Leadership Initiative, as we talked about the values of John McClendon, integrity, education, leadership, and mentorship, all the historical factors that both of you have talked about. Again, I want to say thank you for your time. And anytime you have an update that you need a platform to get out, please know that you have a place to share that information with us. And again, gentlemen, thank you for your time. We hope to hear from you soon. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
This is Dr. Ville with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. As we start to close up the show, we do our last 15 minutes, and we'll be bringing on shortly, I believe, Rob Calloway to kind of give us some initiatives as he gets into his show and what he has up for the evening. And first of all, I hope you enjoyed the show today. We try to continue to push the envelope, get you information, get you interviews with different parts of the sport business, HBCU frameworks that you don't get anywhere else. And so again, let us know what you think. Push this information out. If you want more of this, we need your support. And part of your support is sharing the information. Obviously, we'll have information how you can provide monetary donations to the show to support in many different ways. So again, we just want to say thank you. Let's get on Rob Calloway so we can just talk about jumping off in regards to his thoughts on the show today and what he has up for us starting at 8:15 Eastern Standard Time in regards to the HBCU report as Rob does it. With that, as we get Rob journeying up in here and coming on board, in regards to that, what are your thoughts on the show today, Mike and Charles? As I see Rob, we'll let him jump on that after we get some thoughts from you, Charles, and then we'll go to Rob and back that up with Mike.
Tremendous discussion on the McClendon initiative, and I think Coach Calipari, he touched on it in terms of go Google John McClendon. I mean, he's known as the father of the fast break, and as we get back into watching a little bit of basketball, getting back to some live basketball, keep his name in mind as you watch these stars flopping down the court. One of our listeners, they made a comment. The Four Corners offense, that's not Dean Smith's offense. That's John McClendon's offense. So
I was happy that he shared it. Yeah, that's important. That content.
So tremendous discussion.
Thank you. I'm glad to see he did his homework. Let me jump and get Rob in there, and we're going to go right back to you, Mike, in regards to it. Rob, what's your thoughts on the show today, and then what do you have for us in your show coming after this shortly?
Man, I'm just getting home.
I told you. Tell us.
I've been flying.
How you really feel?
By the seat of my pants, man. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, oh my God. Yeah, man. I'm gonna talk about it on tonight's show, but dude, I was looking for like a little part-time gig, because I always keep me like a little part-time gig, right? Man, that dang part-time gig I was looking for a 4-hour job, boy, an 8-hour job ran up. Like, boy, and it has taken over my life. I mean, my life, but Friday's my last day. So there's that part.
hey, Rob,
he just throw that in there.
Do they know that?
Yeah, they know. Yeah. I'm not that kind of guy. I let them know. But I am looking for the Small Business Association to bless me with one of them grants, though. That's what I'm looking for now.
I hear you on that. We're gonna come right back to you and let you tell us what the listeners can expect from the show today. But Mike, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I had a couple of takeaways. Well, first, he referenced one of your articles, and I could just see your ears flopping. So, like, but that lets you know two things: that they've done their homework, they're well researched, and that was important to me. The second thing is that they truly have bought into this program.
Yeah,
I mean, this program is great, but you heard it come out through both, Commissioner Moore and Coach Calipari. They bought in 150%. The third thing that Coach Calipari did not get into is that you kind of look for a person that's going to talk about this program to model the program. His coaching staff models the program. If you look at the minority staffing that he has right now, and then if you look at the actions and his contributions to the program, and if you look at the dedication that Coach Moore has to this program, so they've modeled it. So those were my 3 or 4 takeaways. So I thought it was a tremendous interview.
Go ahead, Charles.
Hey, and I want to reference at the beginning of the show, Dr. Philippa Evans, a tremendous discussion in terms of sports consumption and kind of the mental health aspect that everybody is going through in terms of trying to get back, to some sense of normalcy. So if you didn't get a chance to catch the first part of the show, please go back and listen. She did a tremendous job in terms of breaking down that whole framework. So really enjoyed that.
And she related it to really simplistic events that we basically are very familiar with on a day-to-day, week-to-week, year-to-year basis. And I know she's a PhD, but she did a great job, as CB said, at really bringing it home and relating it to our every year lives when it comes to HBCU
very much so.
Events. So
certainly with the wrap, I want to get your thoughts. Which direction you're going tonight? Maybe you're going to touch a little bit, or maybe you're going to go outside of it. You have FAMU, the news on HBCUsports.com, talking about the waiver signaturing or signing away the waiver at FAMU. You had the North Carolina A&T looking as if they were going to the Big South, and that was not so fast from the MEAC in regards to the meeting today. Or are you jumping on this Prairie View A&M AD Dr. Donald Reed in his statement in regards to La Tech, that you got some information out of Open Mic Network in regards to his comments or the comments of La Tech and what that transpired. And obviously the earlier article I was referencing was North Carolina came out of HBCUGameDay.com. So, man, a lot of angles. What you going to touch on for us, man?
Man, well, first of all, I got to talk about that whole waiver situation, because that's just crazy. Yeah, you can sign this. Just say if you get COVID, we ain't responsible. But I'm gonna run the gamut, man. Tonight, our good friend Ken Rashad go join the show, and so we just go move as spirit leads us. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know how that goes sometimes. You just let spirit just lead you. But we're definitely going to be talking about this waiver situation, as well as a few other things like the just COVID in general, because COVID is changing a lot of things, and a lot of people don't realize how much it's really changing the landscape of not just sports, but academia. Excuse me. I know I'm here with some academics. I got to get that right.
Did you say academia?
Yeah, like macadamia. Yeah, I did. That's why I get it right. I had to get it right. But look, you know, it's changing the landscape of a lot, you know, and really quick before I had to jump off here and get ready to start the show. You know, me and Dr. Cavill had actually talked a while back about the fact that some of these schools aren't going back until February. So if you're not going back to February, how the hell y'all gonna play basketball?
True.
Yep.
The start in February. So how the hell y'all gonna play basketball? So, you know, I got a lot to talk about today. I got a lot. Well, a lot of, I got a lot. I always got a lot to talk about. I got to go. Thank you.
I love it. We are getting ready to close the show. We are Dr. Ville's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Hope you enjoyed our show today with Dr. Felipe Evans, psychologist talking about coping about sports. And then obviously Greg Moore of the SIAC and John Calipari, the University of Kentucky head men's basketball coach. And you just finished with Rob Calloway. Join us on his show next.
Why did I have to come on? Why I have to come on after Coach Calipari? I should have been first. How he get to come on before me?
Hey, if you sign this waiver, we'll let you.
Then you get to come on. Right.
There you go. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. We look forward to next week, and we will discuss the latest news in the lab. That'll do it for us. Follow me, Dr. Cavill, D-R-K.
I love my HBCU. And boy,
I
love it. I love it.
Dream big.
I love my HBCU.
And man, talk with you soon.
I hope my team they won.
Lecture.
Yes. I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won.